Hello Internet, Daniel with Driving and Dragons, and I'm here just to intro a little series I'm going to do here shortly. I'm going to do a couple of videos here on using real-world history as a tabletop role-playing game participant. Both game masters and players can benefit very heavily from use of real-world history and even just like a cursory study. If you know just enough to be a little below the surface level, it's kind of a big deal. And I feel that history in general is grossly underutilized. So what I'm looking at more than anything is we have all these situations where people are trying to make memorable characters or build worlds that feel lived in and fleshed out. And the most well-known shortcut to kind of pick that up is to go out and take things from either media sources or real life. So I'm going to do a Viking style setting, so I'm going to pull some Anglo-Saxon Brittany or some Northern European Gallic stuff, going from maybe Roman Empire, invasion of Gaul type situation, that sort of thing. But you get a cursory glance of it, and that's kind of where it stops a lot of time. I think it's very heavily underutilized. So I'm going to break it up a little bit, do some talk about an overview of using it as a game master, an overview of using it as a player, and different ways that it can be done. I'm going to try and get some decent little examples written up just to be a little bit more succinct with it. I know I typically try to do things more top of mind and more free-flowing, but I think it would definitely benefit to not necessarily script it out, but at least have a good framework for some great examples of what I mean when I say going deeper. So just as an intro and as a quick overview here, game masters. For game masters, first off, it's one of the best shortcuts on the planet, especially if you are, like me, you don't have a ton of free time to dedicate to writing and creating and world building, but you still want to have memorable games for your players to play in that are not just modules, not just plug and play into somebody else's world. Me personally, I've always preferred to be a game master. I do like to play. I like to play characters. I like to come up with interesting characters. But at my heart, I'm a writer, and I enjoy creating worlds and creating places for my players to live in and develop stories and create those memories in. And that can take a lot of time. And especially if you're somebody who doesn't have a real creative bent to them, it's even worse. And one of the best shorthands is to plug and play something you already know. And history provides an almost infinite source of stories and settings and locations for you to really build for your world. Same thing with players. With a player, your responsibility in the game as a player is your character. It's your character. It's what they are, how they think, what their decisions are, what their personality is, how they use their abilities, and knowing that character inside and out is your responsibility as a player. You can use the same shorthand to help create memorable characters, and it has a distinct advantage over some of the more common tactics that are seen. And by that, what I mean is we all see it at every table. I'm going to be such and such anime character. My character is like this guy from such and such TV show, but different. Oh, he's kind of a Gandalf type character. They're pulling from a TV series, a comic book series, an anime series, a fantasy novel series, a mystery novel series, an action adventure movie. The biggest problem you run into there is lack of material, lack of information, lack of knowledge. And you don't have that when it comes to history, for the most part, unless it's something that you're you're specifically being drawn to. And the second thing that you run into is too much familiarity. So I'll use a good example here, one that's more easily understood. If you're going to make a character, all right, and you're making a Han Solo type character, it's only a matter of time before everybody realizes that you've made a Han Solo type character. And no matter what, as you're playing the game and you're trying to bring out this character's personality, you're trying to develop this character into something memorable, everybody in their head is always going back to, oh yeah, that's exactly what Han Solo would do. In their head, you are the discount Chinese knockoff Han Solo. You know, you're the sweatshop Han Solo is what you've become. And it comes from the fact that while yes, everybody has different tastes and you can have a lot of diversity of interest at a gaming table, at the end of the day, the gaming community, there's going to be certain themes and certain parallels that run through them. For instance, I guarantee you there is a much, much higher percentage of anime fans among the tabletop role-playing game community than there are in the general population. If I go poll 1,000 Dungeons and Dragons players and I poll 1,000 guys who play fantasy football on the weekend, I'm going to have a whole lot more people who know who a Goku or a Vegeta or a Guts is in the D&D group than I am the fantasy football group every single time, even with that particular medium being more mainstream. Same thing with books. More people are going to understand who a Legolas or a Gimli are amongst tabletop role-playing games than they are amongst the general population as a whole, just because those kind of threads run through. And we all know it. You're going to have people at your table who can quote your favorite movies, almost the whole script. You guys can just play scenes out right there at the table. And a lot of that also comes from not only are there certain threads that run through the gaming community, but you're not going to be at a table with a bunch of people who are radically different in their interests than you. And you're going to have that oddball exception, but as a general rule of thumb, the people that you're going to be spending 6, 7, 8 hours a weekend with at a gaming table are going to be people that have some similar interests and likes. Otherwise, you're not going to want to spend that time with them. So when you go in and you pull a character out of a book or a movie, they're going to pick up on it pretty quick, and in their head, it's always going to be, I'm the discount Indiana Jones in my Hollow Earth game. Or I'm the discount Darth Vader in my Traveler or my Star Wars game. And I don't want that. I want to have that nice, unique character. And I want to have that unique war story that really influences that we talk about for years going forward. And it's our story. It's our character. Same thing with the worlds. If I'm plugging and playing from fantasy, I'm either plugging somebody into somebody else's world. Like, we're going to play in Faerun. Okay, well, we're in Faerun. We're in this Dungeons and Dragons world. We're in Night City. Okay, it's cyberpunk. This is somebody else's creation. And somewhere in the back of my head, maybe I have a good game that's got an interesting story, but I got a player who knows Night City like the back of his hands. Like, that's not how Arasaka works. Anyway, how is Militech able to stand up to, how is Biotechnica able to stand up to Militech? They're so much smaller. You know, it's right there in the lore. We don't want that to happen in our games. And the way you do it with history is you got so much more information, so much more interest. When I pull a Han Solo, I can get a hardcore Star Wars fan who can tell me all about Han Solo, but he still can't tell me as much about Han Solo as even a casual historian can about, say, George Custer or Nathan Bedford Forrest or William the Conqueror or Julius Caesar. Why? Because Han Solo is still, even though he's got a huge history behind him because of all the expanded universe and everything, but at the end of the day, he is a created character, and the only history for him that exists, the only context that exists, is that context that was built specifically to make that character. And there's an end. There's a wall, that invisible wall like you find in a video game when you get to the edge of the map. There is an invisible wall at the end of Han Solo's development and story. I can only ask why so many times before I run out of why something happened. Because he is a created character, and the backstory is only there in so much as it was needed for the writers, needs for the story. Their narrative purposes. Whereas if I take a Julius Caesar, I've got Julius Caesar, I've got biographies, I've got contemporary accounts from friends and enemies and random people who just knew who he was because he was a major figure in Roman politics. I've got his own writings and letters about everything from the mundane to no matter how deep I want to go, I can find out just about everything short of which tree he peed on in southern France when he was in Gaul. I can know these things about him, and if I want to make a Julius Caesar, if I want to use him as an archetype, I know exactly what I need to change and what I need to tweak to have a super fleshed out character and to always have an answer for my character's backstory without me having to write an autobiography for a real human and think about how he fits into the world. GM side, same deal. If I want to, I can either go in there and say, I'm going to do a classical Greek campaign theme. I can either just take the skin of Athens, Thebes, Sparta, and slap them on top of a D&D setting and call it a day. And well, why does this city behave this way? Well, that's because Athens behaved that way, and they're my Athens stand-in. Oh, really? That doesn't make any sense. Or I can watch 2 or 3 YouTube videos on Greece, on Greek history. I can maybe watch 1 or 2 on each city-state that I'm going to plug into my world. And now, as a game master, my world feels more lived in because my fake pseudo-Greek history has reasons why there's certain alliances and certain cultures that came up. I can go several levels deep in why certain people behave a certain way, why certain armies work a certain way, why a political climate is the way it is, and I know roughly how things are going. And I can mix and match that too. Yeah, maybe I have a Greek-skinned world, but I'm using a climate that's more akin to the U.S. Civil War. I still know why certain attitudes are there. And a prime example being, let's say that you have two nations at war in your campaign setting. These 2 nations are at war. Why are they at war? Does that war extend beyond the nobility? Is that war all the way down to the core? Do the commoners hate each other with a passion? Or do the commoners not really care? That's a rich man's game. They're fighting over crowns and territory, and you're just hoping you can get your harvest done. And you sure hope that your king's troops are there when the other king's raiders show up, but you barely even know. You may not even know who your king is. Are the merchants still trading with each other or trying to get around a trade embargo? What is the climate? Why was the war caused? What is the root of it? How far back does it go? Is this a new upstart nation that is coming in, but it's really because the former king of the old nation was actually a distant cousin of this one? I can plug those wherever they need to go, but because I'm using a real world source, I can go in and change things to adapt to my world, or I can go in and just change a name, apply a name swap Band-Aid and say, in my Oriental Adventures game, with my stand-in for medieval or ancient China, where everybody's fighting amongst the provinces, instead of War of Three Kingdoms, the Three Kingdoms period, I basically have the War of the Roses in China. And it makes a unique game for everybody to enjoy. But I have a real history of things that happened that with just cursory research, I can make my whole world feel more fleshed out and lived in. So I think it's really an underutilized resource. I think that real history is one of the best places to build memorable characters and memorable gameplay. So I'm going to make a few more videos just talking about how can we use history to improve our experience at the table, both in terms of our characters as players, our behavior as characters, and as our as world building tools, and how our NPCs act, and how we make our world feel like a more real, lived in place. So as I'm getting ready to start shooting these, go ahead, leave your advice in the comment section. Let's see what we can come up with. Maybe there's something that I'm not going to think of that pops up. But I want to hear how you use history in your games, and if you think I'm on the money, or if really we should just be playing tabletop Dragon Ball Z Simulator because that's what everybody wants, and I'm way off base when it comes to how in-depth people want their worlds to feel, how real they want them to feel. Like, comment, and subscribe, and check it out down below. Check out some of my previous videos and let me know what you think, but I look forward to making these for you. See you next time.